In London, we spoke with David Shaler, a former MI5 agent who was convicted of breaking the Official Secrets Act and imprisoned for 6 months.
With regard to 7/7, there has been a witness report now included in a local British newspaper called the Cambridge Evening News, in which somebody who was on one of the tube trains says that he didn't see a man with a rucksack. In fact, after the explosion, what he saw was metal pointing upward from the bottom of the carriage. That would indicate, of course, that the bomb was not carried onto the tube train, but was in fact attached underneath it. Now again, nobody in the British national press is following that up. Now I hope investigators and the police are.
A current member of British Parliament and a former cabinet minister in Prime Minister Tony Blair's government, Michael Meacher, was sacked in 2003 for raising important questions on the eve of the Iraq War.
Atrocity of London bombings where 56 people were killed. That was on the 7th of July, 7/7 we call it. It's a very convenient way of ensuring there is fear, of ensuring that there is control, and of ensuring that those who are in the know, and of course we cannot tell you because it is all secret, are in a position of extreme power.
As part of our inquiry into the London bombing, we wanted to investigate the suspicious death of Jean Charles de Menezes. Within days of his brutal murder at the Stockwell tube station in the London Underground, evidence of a cover-up began to emerge. We were at the station just a week after he was killed, and many of the facts we've covered were already public knowledge. But still, some of the locals made excuses for the police.
What did you witness with the unfortunate Brazilian man that died?
All we saw was the police running into the station with guns. That's all we saw. We didn't see anything else at all. And then after that, a couple of seconds after that, we were vacated down South Lambeth Road. That was all we saw. We didn't see anything else.
I mean, are you sad for him and his family that he's dead?
Oh, yeah, but at the end of the day, he should have stopped and surrendered, shouldn't he? If it had happened in his own country, he would have been shot down as well. So, with all that's gone on, the police were only doing what they thought was best, as far as I'm concerned.
Why do you think he ran?
Well, because his visa had run out, obviously, but he's not going to have armed police running after him just because his visa's run out, has he? So, the police were protecting, you know, the people travelling on the tube, so I don't see any wrong in what the police have done at all.
I understand your view on that. Why do you think they shot him 8 times in the head?
Oh, I don't know. It's a lot of times to shoot him. It is a lot of times to shoot him.
How many times did you hear they shot him?
5 at first. 5, and then, no, 3 first, then 5, then it went up to 8. So...
And the police admit they tackled him and then shot him.
Well, they told him to surrender, didn't they? They told him to stop, and he didn't. He carried on running, so, you know. What else could they have done, as far as I'm concerned?
007, huh?
007.
License to kill.
Yeah. I still believe that there should be a shoot-to-kill policy. I still believe, personally. But that's my views, you know. I think people should give up their liberty for freedom.
All right.
London police were later forced to admit that Mr. de Menezes never ran from them, wasn't wearing a heavy coat, and that a special army unit had killed him execution style with over 10 shots to the head at point-blank range. The British government was so desperate to keep the details of the shooting secret that they went so far as to arrest an ITN television journalist who had simply gotten a copy of what would normally be a public police report. Government whistleblowers and police have also been suspended and arrested for telling the truth. We had our details taken and were threatened with arrest simply for asking questions of locals outside the Stockwell station and videotaping police.
Where are you based?
Austin, Texas.
Alex, what's your date for?
2/11/74. Would you just rather see my driver's license?
No, it's okay.
Well, here, just let me do it. Take it down.
That's all I need, mate.
Well, I mean...
And you're just, you're filming for a program back in the States or something?
Exactly. In fact, I think it'll probably be broken into...
Think about it.
Sir, what do you think about this event?
I think it's very bad that it happened.
What do you think should happen?
I think the policy of shooting should have been more thoroughly thought out. I'm afraid there must have been a terrible mistake here.
I feel very sorry for the family and very sorry for the policemen that made a horrible mistake.
Yeah, it's going to be bad for everybody.
It's a tragedy all round, I think.
Thank you.
The police first claimed that it was a hot morning, when official weather reports showed that it was around 60 degrees, and that Mr. de Menezes was running down the street wearing a giant padded coat with wires sticking out of it, that he vaulted over the turnstiles, charged through a crowd of pedestrians, raced onto the train, and was about to detonate bombs when the heroic officers gunned him down. The authorities then conveniently claimed that all the surveillance cameras malfunctioned that morning. Police have now been forced to admit, thanks to watchdogs in their ranks, that none of the cameras malfunctioned, and they've now released the video. The government has now been forced to admit that he was wearing a light denim jacket, and there were no wires of any type. Police that weren't part of the special military unit didn't know why they killed him. The police had followed him from his home. They knew that he was a Latin Brazilian working in England as an electrician. They followed him for 30 minutes as he walked from his home towards the station. Once in the station, he calmly picked up a Metro paper, paid for his ticket with his Metro Oyster card, and then walked onto the train. Passengers then reported that they were told to get off the train. Once they'd stepped off, still looking through the windows, they saw the Special Forces police squat on Mr. de Menezes and shoot him over 10 times in the head. Witnesses said de Menezes looked at the authorities as if he knew them. He was like a scared rabbit, and he was killed execution style. The question is why? A special military hit team stalked him and tracked him from his home to the train station, and then killed him in cold blood, making sure he was dead. It's well known that if somebody has a bomb, you don't shoot at them, and you certainly don't get near them. No, Mr. de Menezes had seen something he wasn't supposed to see. He learned a little too much, and he had to be eliminated. Within hours of the 7/7 bombings, Israeli army radio was reporting that Benjamin Netanyahu, the former prime minister of Israel, had been warned not to leave his hotel that morning to attend a meeting less than 100 yards away from one of the train stations that was bombed. The Associated Press ran the headline, "Netanyahu changed plans due to warning." Then the current Prime Minister, Ariel Sharon's office, instructed Israeli officials not to give interviews to the foreign media concerning the warning. Israel's Foreign Office attempted to spin the story, saying that they'd given a general warning to the British that day. Then, several weeks later, the head of Mossad told a major German newspaper that he indeed had issued a warning to Benjamin Netanyahu at 8:40 a.m., 10 minutes before the first blast. Conveniently for authorities, the bus surveillance camera malfunctioned. Something else happened that was convenient for the establishment line. All 4 of the supposed bombers' identification cards survived unscathed at all 4 events. But there was just one problem. In one case, one of the bombers' IDs was found at 2 separate locations. As the evidence mounts, it is crystal clear. Only criminal elements of the British government could stage the attacks and then engage in the cover-up. The reason the Netanyahu story is important is it clearly shows that other intelligence agencies were aware of what was going on in London that day and took necessary precautions to protect their Minister of Finance.